I've always been drawn to stories where the wild world collides with our own, sometimes with tragic consequences. Take the case of Lisa Hartwell, a dedicated runner in Colorado. She dismissed the local wildlife warnings, confident in her familiar routine. But her commitment to those early morning runs would soon put her in grave danger. It was October 7th, 2016. The affluent neighborhood of Wildwood Heights in Boulder, Colorado was still quiet in the early morning darkness. This upscale residential area, built just 5 years earlier on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, had winding streets lined with modern homes backing onto natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator, was starting her daily 5 a.m. jog through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets. Lisa had moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier, drawn by the promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. A dedicated fitness enthusiast, she maintained a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding career, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Lisa's morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time to clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing an unusually dry autumn, with drought conditions extending well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were venturing closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks in backyards and a large cat near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard the warnings but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrents, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second largest wild cat species. Adult males weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters that rely on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the drainage culvert. The 140-pound mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance in a single powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt street. His weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. His 4-inch canine teeth punctured through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there's the story of Felicity Grant. It was August 19, 2017, when she arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado. This vast wilderness area is known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails, attracting outdoor enthusiasts. But these same wilderness areas also serve as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and the belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I remember reading the details of Felicity's story, and it stayed with me for days. She was an influencer who disregarded trail clothes, convinced they didn't apply to elite athletes like herself. She even tore down warning notices, claiming taxpayers like her had every right to use public trails. She chose the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail for a solo dawn run, ignoring all warnings. Fellow hiker Maria Santos had tried to warn her about the dangers, but Felicity was dismissive, even cruel, accusing Maria of jealousy. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can weigh up to 180 pounds and Mia over 8 feet long, with powerful hind legs that propel them 40 feet in a single leap. Their retractable claws, up to 4 inches long, grip prey, and their 4-inch canine teeth deliver fatal neck bites, severing the spinal cord. These solitary hunters prefer to ambush from behind and above, using stealth and patience. And unfortunately, Felicity presented the perfect target. Felicity began her run at 5:30 a.m., wanting to avoid other hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones and carried a backpack with raw steaks for a post-workout meal. Her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created perfect conditions to attract a hunting mountain lion. A 140-pound male mountain lion, already hunting in the area, detected the scent of meat from over a mile away and began tracking her. The cougar stalked Felicity along the ridge, using rocks and trees for cover. As Felicity rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder about 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below, unaware due to her loud music and arrogance, the mountain lion launched a devastating aerial attack. The predator struck from behind with tremendous force, claws raking down her back, front paws wrapping around her shoulders and neck. The mountain lion's canine teeth found their target, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. Mountain lions kill prey by targeting the cervical vertebrae. This male executed the attack with deadly efficiency. His powerful jaws applied crushing press, over 400 pounds per square inch, directly to Felicity's spinal cord, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into the neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis. The cougar maintained his grip, claws securing his position. His hind legs continued raking down her spine and legs, opening deep wounds that bled profusely. Within 2 minutes, Felicity died from a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the trail to feed undisturbed. Felicity's body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. The location and condition of the remains confirmed a mountain lion attack. Now, I want to tell you about Jennifer Walsh. It was December 3, 2014, and fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the kennels at the county animal shelter. Jennifer, 25 and a veterinary student, moved between cages, believing every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, she advocated for the shelter's most difficult cases, gravitating toward aggressive dogs with red cards, dogs marked for immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child requiring emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment was clear. He was too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization on Monday, Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace restlessly, heard him growl, watched him destroy toys. But she'd also noticed moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Staff with years of experience and proper equipment were required for any interaction with red card animals. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. "There's a case that haunts me, a stark reminder that good intentions are no substitute for experience. It involves a dog named Diesel, a young woman named Jennifer, and a series of choices that ended in tragedy. It's a story often told in veterinary schools, a cautionary tale etched in blood. Diesel was in his kennel, and Jennifer approached with a slip lead and the key to the isolation room, a small, windowless space meant for behavioral evaluations. Diesel's reaction was immediate. Lips pulled back, yellowed teeth exposed, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. His body language screamed danger, but Jennifer saw fear, not aggression. The moment the kennel door opened, Diesel's demeanor shifted. He seemed to assess Jennifer's position in the doorway. This hesitation gave her the false confidence to slip the lead around his neck and guide him to the isolation room. Once inside, she closed the door and removed the lead, believing freedom would help him relax. The room was small, just 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and nothing but a metal folding chair. Designed for safety, it offered nowhere to run. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid, his eyes fixed on Jennifer. She sat in the chair talking to him in a gentle, encouraging voice, unaware that she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she meant as a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, it was a threat. His 75 pounds launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with precision. Her scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked, unbreaking. Jennifer's hands clawed at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat. His grip was unbreakable. His powerful neck muscles shook violently, tearing through tissue and bone while maintaining his hold. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles weakened, her body going into shock. The attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Other volunteers heard Jennifer's scream and rushed to the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they got the key and got inside, Jennifer lay motionless on the concrete floor, her life ebbing away in a pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with the same aggressive intensity that had marked him for euthanization. Paramedics arrived quickly, but Jennifer's injuries were beyond medical intervention. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her dream of becoming a veterinarian ended by the very type of animal she hoped to save. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized, his death as swift and clinical as the attack that preceded it. The investigation was thorough but predictable. Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignored clear warning signs, and placed herself in a situation that experienced professionals would have avoided. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks on isolation rooms and mandatory buddy systems for all volunteer activities. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools across the country. Her family established a scholarship in her name but requested that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. And then there's the story of Jessica Rodriguez. It was April 17, 2018. And the humid Florida air hung heavy over the grounds of Sunshine Primate Sanctuary. It was a controversial facility that claimed to rescue primates while, in my view, exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. Jessica, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, had visited the facility with her husband, Carlos, believing it was a legitimate conservation effort. She had always been passionate about animal welfare, taking photos of animals throughout her career to document their care and recovery. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue veterinary technology training, working nights to support herself through school. She had dedicated her career to animal welfare, earning her degree through years of hard work and sacrifice. Her passion for primate conservation had led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. Jessica genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety measures consisted of a chain-link barrier that separated visitors from the gorilla's enclave, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. Adult males can weigh up to 400 pounds and possess the strength of 10 grown men. These magnificent animals are highly intelligent and emotionally complex, but they're also territorial and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats to their domain. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, everything changed. A 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm, and in that instant, her life was tragically altered. I've read accounts of gorilla behavior, but this was something else. The speed, the force, it's a chilling reminder of the raw power contained within these magnificent yet inherently wild creatures. Gorillas communicate through complex body language and vocalizations, but they can shift from calm to violent behavior within seconds. Their hands can grip with crushing force. Their powerful jaws hold sharp canine teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. Jessica had approached the barrier, camera in hand, hoping to capture the gorilla's intelligence and emotional depth. The gorilla, named King, appeared calm, sitting near the fence, his massive frame relaxed as he observed the human visitors with apparent curiosity. She began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she could share through these intimate portraits. But then she decided to reach through the fence to touch King. She believed physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She'd observed the gorilla's calm demeanor and interpreted it as friendliness rather than the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. He grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain-link fencing. Jessica's scream of shock and pain filled the facility as his grip tightened with bone-crushing force. Visitors tried desperately to free her, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability to overcome. His massive hand maintained its crushing grip, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault. His powerful hands inflicted devastating trauma to her head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase his aggressive behavior, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats to his territory. Her movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. His grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier. His territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, her struggle ceased. His brutal assault proved fatal. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form while displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclave. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but she was already dead. The investigation revealed that Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit while providing inadequate safety, means, and animal care. The facility was immediately raided and shut down by state authorities, with all primates relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs where he could live out his remaining years in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes rather than exploiting them for profit. It was March 18, 2017. The upscale Asheville, North Carolina neighborhood of Mountain View Estates was experiencing the first warm evening of spring. The residential development, built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains, featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents who relied on her services. She had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German shepherds and a golden retriever, along the community's main street when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do. Their claws and teeth can inflict devastating injuries, especially if they feel their cubs or territory are threatened. I remember reading about Maria, who discovered a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs rummaging through garbage cans. It was a tragic case, one that always stuck with me. Maria immediately began backing away, but the 3 dogs she was walking started barking aggressively at the bears. The mother bear's protective instincts were triggered. She rose to her full height and began making aggressive vocalizations, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to retreat, but the dogs continued barking, escalating the situation. The mother bear charged, covering the 30 yards in seconds. Maria became entangled in the leashes and fell. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable. The bear's paws struck Maria's back and shoulders, driving her face first into the pavement. The bear's jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck. Residents heard the commotion and called 911 while attempting to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived but were unable to save her. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the bear and her cubs, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials relocated the bear family, and the community implemented new waste management protocols. Now, consider Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016. And the Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between encloses with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed changes in her. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance. establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them. The warning signs had been there. The three dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone, was emotionally invested in seeing progress. I've always found it haunting to think about what happens when the lines between savior and resource blur. It's a shift that can happen in an instant with devastating consequences. I'm thinking of Rebecca, who ran an unlicensed dog rescue operation. She filled 5 buckets with kibble every evening, the clanging metal a signal the dogs were waiting for. The ground was slick from a thunderstorm that afternoon as she went toward the main enclosure. The 3 big dogs pressed against the fence, all eyes on the food, muscles tight. She'd done it thousands of times. But this night felt different, the air thick with something more than humidity. As Rebecca unlatched the gate and stepped inside, her boots slipped on the mud. She stumbled, the buckets pulling her down, and the kibble spilled across the ground. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca tried to get up, something changed in his eyes. She wasn't the woman who saved him anymore. She was competition. The attack was sudden. Rex, all 90 pounds of him, slammed into Rebecca's chest, sending her back to the ground. His jaws clamped onto her shoulder, tearing through flesh. Rebecca screamed, but no one was close enough to hear. Within seconds, Titan and Scar joined in, their pack instincts taking over. Titan's jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her away from the gate. Rebecca fought, clawing at Rex's face, trying to break free, but the dogs were in full predatory mode, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the mud as they continued, their growls mixing with Rebecca's cries. The frenzy lasted almost 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay still in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the kibble that had started it all. Her body went undiscovered for 3 days on that isolated property. A delivery driver eventually found her when he arrived with more dog food. Animal control found the 3 dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs considered too dangerous to rehome. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations, and new regulations were put in place, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, it was too late. It was April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector next to the bison paddock, meant to mimic the stillness of Yellowstone, seemed calm. But within the shadows of the pines, something alive and waiting stirred, a rhythm of movement that would soon break the silence. Camille Morel, a 29-year-old fitness instructor from Versailles, lived by routine. Her clients knew her for her precision and discipline. After 6 months of non-stop classes, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris where guests could experience a wilderness immersion without leaving the country. She'd stayed there once before and remembered waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running routine intact. To her friends, it made sense. The park's trails and roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector next to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce stress and liability. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, like she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness, pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream. At dawn, the service road and the inner track looked almost identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory covered nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 miles per hour in short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans happen when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing the double lock from fully engaging. And when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left without confirming the gate was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed through, but that step was missed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path bordering the guest area, seeing no posted. The wolves emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. When I read that line, it stayed with me for days. Camille, the jogger, slowed, confused by their presence, thinking the barrier must be nearby. She'd seen them behind fences before, but when they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc, the shift in their posture made her freeze. She turned and saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her. She started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated, paws thudding against the dirt. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw Camille glanced back once at the wolves. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell forward, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper in the tower sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted around the inner fence lines, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes, within normal range for a keeper-initiated emergency call. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. 1 ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort to Versailles. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016. The scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've seen the aftermath of so many animal encounters, and each one leaves me with a familiar sense of unease. There's a story that always comes back to me, a stark reminder of how quickly things can turn deadly. It's about a woman named Ashley, a 400-pound lion named Caesar, and a single, fateful selfie. Ashley was visiting an animal sanctuary, and like many visitors, she was captivated by the animals. The owner of the sanctuary was sharing stories, perhaps embellished, about each animal's rescue. Caesar, a massive African lion, seemed remarkably calm, having been hand-raised since he was a cub. As the tour ended, Ashley saw an opportunity for a photo, the ultimate photo. She whispered her plan to her companion, Jake. She wanted a close-up selfie with Caesar, and she needed Jake to distract the sanctuary owner while she hopped over the barrier. While Jake kept the owner busy, Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclosure and climbed over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The massive lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes following her every move but showing no immediate aggression. Ashley crouched down, phone in hand, ready to capture the moment. But as she moved closer, Caesar's demeanor changed subtly. His ears flattened against his head, and his tail began to twitch. Then, with explosive suddenness, the attack came. Caesar's predatory instincts took over the moment Ashley adjusted her pose. Millions of years of evolutionary programming recognized her as prey in his territory. The 400-pound lion launched himself at her with devastating speed. Ashley's phone went flying as Caesar's massive paws struck her chest, driving her backward onto the ground. His razor-sharp claws dug into her torso and shoulders. The lion's powerful jaws clamped down on Ashley's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault. His claws raked across Ashley's body. His bite maintained its grip on her throat. Ashley's movements grew weaker as blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelmed her. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but Caesar's aggressive posture made intervention too dangerous. Ashley was gone within minutes. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed that the facility lacked proper permits and insurance, violating numerous state regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death devastated her family and led to enhanced safety education at her university. The incident prompted stricter regulations for private exotic animal facilities and enhanced enforcement of existing safety laws. Then there's the story of Giovanni Russo, a certified alpine guide in Gran Paradiso National Park in northern Italy. It was May 21, 2018. Giovanni, his wife Elena, and a pair of hikers from Milan had finished dinner beside a dying fire, leaving a storage bag unsealed. Giovanni had worked those slopes for over a decade, leading trekking tours for tourists seeking an authentic mountain experience. He was known for his practicality, his ability to know when to turn back and when to press on. The Grand Paradiso region had become a focal point for conservation. Wolves had returned after decades of absence, a fact Giovanni respected, but didn't fear. He saw himself as part of the balance between humans and wildlife, often telling clients that predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine, a mild ascent to a designated campsite. His clients, though inexperienced, trusted him completely. But that night, someone had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed into the same area. Wolves in this region averaged between 60 and 70 pounds with lean gray coats. Normally nocturnal, they hunted red deer in coordinated packs, but recently rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling, first near the cooking area, then a faint growl. She thought it was a fox until she saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag now lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside alone. He walked towards the food zone. The beam of his flashlight caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm on the ground. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands as he took another step forward, closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm in a defensive snap. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward. Blood pulsed through his injuries. The wolves held their ground, uncertain now, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've spent years studying the complex relationship between humans and the natural world, and some stories still haunt me. The Lawson family arrived at Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India, on July 15, 2016. What awaited them was a stark reminder of nature's unforgiving power. The park is a vast mangrove delta where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. The ancient mangrove trees rise from brackish water, their aerial roots creating an impenetrable network. Saltwater crocodiles lurk beneath the surface, and venomous snakes coil in the canopy above. It was into this world that the Lawsons ventured, unaware of the tragedy that awaited. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had booked the most expensive boat tour. She was, by all accounts, a demanding woman, unwilling to accept limitations. She'd already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing, and her husband, David, seemed unable to moderate her behavior. The teenage children, Emma and Jake, watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, despite his 15 years of experience, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's threats of negative reviews. The motorboat was equipped with safety barriers, meant to keep tourists safe from the apex predators. But Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles. She wanted authentic jungle photographs. The Sundarbans are the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers. These tigers are exceptional swimmers, uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment, and they have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 pounds and measuring over 10 feet in length, these magnificent cats possess 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes. Their orange and black stripes provide perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows of the mangrove forest. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks along the muddy shoreline. He immediately cut the engine and whispered for complete silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through the area. Despite his urgent warnings about remaining in the boat, Genevieve became frustrated with the distance. She needed closer photographs, she declared. Against all protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep water, camera held high above her head, moving toward the mangrove shoreline. Unbeknownst to the group, a 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream, detecting their boat's engine minutes earlier. These tigers are ambush predators, using water as their primary hunting medium. This particular male had killed humans before and recognized the sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. As Genevieve photographed tiger tracks, she remained unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, propelling itself through the murky channel. The attack erupted from the water with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and clamped its powerful jaws around her throat from behind. The 4-inch canine teeth punctured through her neck muscles and crushed her windpipe with over 1,000 pounds of bite force. The tiger suffocated its prey by crushing the throat, and the prez collapsed her airway instantly. Genevieve's body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels, causing massive internal bleeding. The predator's forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. Then the tiger began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water while maintaining its crushing hold. I remember reading about Genevieve, and the details still haunt me. The tiger's crushing bite, the severed arteries, the forced submersion. It all proved fatal in under 2 minutes. Her struggles ceased as blood loss and oxygen deprivation took over, and the tiger held her underwater for several more minutes before vanishing back into the mangroves. Now I'm turning the pages of a different case. It was November 15th, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, in eastern Russia. Snow fell, muting the usual sounds. Nikolai Baranov, a 52-year-old forestry worker, had been silent on the radio since morning. He'd spent most of his life in those forests, managing patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains. He monitored traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone in a small settlement near Dalner, his life built around the forest. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve after reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, a canvas bag packed with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. Colleagues said he preferred working solo, claiming a second engine scared off wildlife. His assignment was simple: Document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had become increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Here, wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across frozen ground and sparse woodland. Their diets shifted with the seasons: deer in autumn, carrion, or smaller mammals. In the hard winter months when prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the warnings at the station that morning but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several unanswered radio attempts, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight and a sidearm. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight still faintly glowing. Prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgen later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults and 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dahlner for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Now we turn to another place, another time. It was June 14, 2015, and the Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around a series of interconnected retention ponds and decorative canals, had been marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees seeking the Florida lifestyle. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in the Sunshine State from the comfort of his backyard patio, which overlooked one of the community's scenic waterways. Walt had moved alligators have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. That fact alone is astonishing to me. Perfectly adapted as ambush hunters, some adult males can reach 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds, with a bite pres exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch. I've seen the force of those jaws up close, and it's a primal thing, a connection to a world far older than our own. Walt had moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business, drawn by the promise of year-round golf, fishing, and outdoor living that Ohio winters had denied him. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks that visited his backyard. His routine involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset on the water while tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community was built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers created retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater and add attractive water features. These artificial waterways connected to natural creek systems flowing into Tampa Bay, corridors for wildlife movement. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, increasing wildlife activity. Walt had noticed more alligators, but, like most Floridians, he'd learned to coexist. Walt's regular duck feeding, however, created a reliable food source. Alligators are opportunistic feeders, consuming birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close. One evening, Walt was relaxing when he noticed his favorite fishing lure tangled in vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a net to free the lure, something he'd done many times without incident. Confident the water was safe. The attack came from directly beneath him as he stood in the canal. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks, exploded upward. The reptile's jaws clamped on Walt's right leg, crushing bone. The 3,000 pounds of bite press fractured his femur and severed major arteries. The alligator initiated its death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining its grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him into the canal, where the gator's advantages became overwhelming. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal. Within minutes, Walt's movement ceased as drowning and blood loss overwhelmed him. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of the call, but the alligator had retreated with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through the night to locate and capture the reptile, safely extracting both the alligator and Walt's remains. The investigation revealed Walt's duck feeding had attracted the alligator, leading to the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to water safety protocols, including warning signs around all ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014, and the vast wetlands of the Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing sun. Sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teeming with wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with airboat tours, carrying tourists into alligator territory, where reptiles basked on mud banks and hunted in the dark water. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was on his first visit to Florida, part of a cross-country road trip celebrating his promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, hiking in the Pacific Northwest. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips. His methodical approach to problem-solving had made him successful, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence. Michael enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family. That afternoon, he joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat. Alligators. I've always been fascinated by how perfectly they're adapted for their role as ambush hunters in aquatic environments. Did you know that adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds? Their jaw muscles can exert over 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. They can even launch themselves partially out of the water with explosive force. Anything moving near their territory is viewed as either prey or a threat. I remember reading about an airboat tour that had been progressing smoothly for nearly an hour when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank. It was about 20 feet from their position. The reptile was an exceptional specimen, easily 12 feet in length and weighing over 800 pounds, its prehistoric form perfectly motionless in the afternoon heat. One of the passengers, Michael, began photographing the magnificent predator, excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal to show his colleagues back in Seattle. However, his enthusiasm quickly overcame his caution as he leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots of the massive alligator. The fatal moment came when Michael's phone slipped from his grip and began falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward and extended his body over the side of the airboat, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. The massive alligator had been monitoring the boat's presence with predatory patience, and Michael's sudden movement triggered its attack response immediately. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. Its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, while the massive alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip on Michael's arm. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body was not recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the massive alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. I also remember reading about Maria Santos. It was July 8, 2017, and the Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as she loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities, but the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others. a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to. There's a chilling truth I've learned from years of research. Even kindness can be misinterpreted in the wild. I remember reading about Maria, a woman who tried to help a pack of stray dogs. She fed them, cared for them, likely saw them as creatures in need. But one day, her simple act of stepping in to break up a fight turned fatal. The pack turned on her. It wasn't that they were inherently evil, but their instincts, sharpened by survival, saw her as a threat, competition for resources. Alpha, the presumed leader, attacked first, and the others followed. 80 pounds of dogs struck her chest, knocking her down. Jaws clamped on her arm, teeth tearing through flesh. The other dogs joined, their pack mentality overriding any memory of her kindness. Her screams went unanswered in that abandoned neighborhood. 6 dogs, working together, were too much for any human. The attack spoke to generations of predatory instincts, refined by years of urban survival. They weren't pets gone bad. They were wild animals who had learned to see humans as either threats or prey. By the time they backed away, Maria was gone. The dogs were eventually captured and euthanized, their wild nature deemed impossible to rehabilitate. I've seen similar stories play out in different settings. Take Kendra Sullivan, for instance. She arrived at the Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda on September 8, 2015. It was a sanctuary for orphaned and rescued chimps, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria. Kendra, a wildlife photographer, was there to document the rehabilitation work. She was known for her fearless approach, capturing intimate portraits of animals. Her experience with domestic animals had led her to believe she understood animal behavior, that it transcended species. But Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, and Peter Sally, a caretaker, grew increasingly concerned. She dismissed their safety briefings and demanded access to restricted areas. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized. Despite rehabilitation, they retained their wild instincts, making them extremely dangerous. Chimpanzees are incredibly powerful, 5 times stronger than an adult human. Their grip strength can crush bones, and their canine teeth are over 2 inches long, designed for defense and dominance. Kendra became frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to the maintenance areas where staff entered the enclose. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained that these areas were off limits due to the danger of direct contact with the chimps. But while the group was observing the animals, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. She slipped away, believing her experience had prepared her for anything. The maintenance area brought her within reach of Bozau, the sanctuary's dominant male. He was a 150-pound adult who had been rescued as an infant. Boso had shown aggression toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals there. He was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are territorial and view unfamiliar humans as threats. He became agitated by her intrusion. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera, Boso interpreted it as a direct challenge. His response was immediate. He lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always stays with me. They instinctively target faces, hands, and genitals to inflict maximum damage. It's a chilling glimpse into their aggression. I remember reading about a particularly horrific incident involving a researcher named Kendra. Her bones fractured immediately when a chimpanzee with a force of 1 to 300 eld per square inch pulled her against the barrier. The chimpanzee, named Boso, was immensely strong. He targeted Kendra's face and neck with his canine teeth, which were over 2 inches long and razor-sharp. He tore into her as she was pinned against the barrier. His hands ripped at her clothing and his feet kicked at her torso. The attack lasted nearly 2 minutes. Boso bit and clawed at her face, neck, and upper body. His powerful jaws crushed facial bones, tearing away large sections of skin and muscle. The chimpanzee's sharp teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive bleeding. Kendra's attempts to defend herself were futile against Boso's overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated by his bites, several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. The attack was coordinated, preventing any possibility of escape. Peter Sully, hearing Kendra's screams, rushed to the maintenance area with emergency equipment. He used high-press water hoses to drive Boso away from the barrier after nearly 2 minutes. By then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries to her face, neck, hands, and arms. The massive blood loss from severed arteries combined with shock from her traumatic injuries proved fatal within minutes. Kendra died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency medical services could reach the remote island location. The investigation focused on security failures that allowed visitor access to restricted areas. The Ugandan Wildlife Authority implemented enhanced security measures, and Kendra's family filed lawsuits against the facility. Another story I recall took place on February 9, 2014, near Langus, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered slowly through the northern boreal forest. For 2 men setting out that day, it seemed like another routine trip into familiar woods. But without warning, it would turn into something neither had imagined possible. David Lasky was 45, a part-time wildlife photographer who lived just outside Prince Albert with his wife and teenage son. He'd spent years tracking animal behavior through remote cameras, learning to move silently and read patterns in snow. Photography was both his passion and a source of side income. His real job was at a lumber supply store, but weekends were for the woods. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They had grown up hunting and fishing together, though neither carried a firearm anymore. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple: a 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically gray, thick-coated animals averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups of 4 to 8. Their strength lay in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience rather than outright speed. Under normal conditions, they avoided people entirely, focusing on deer and moose along the forest edges. The men dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow, their breath hanging in the still air. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of crusted ice. David crouched to help him up, steadying his cousin by the arm. That was when both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. The wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half-buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line, a cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending the cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came, a gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. Two more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent years studying how wild animals interact with humans, and sometimes the line between curiosity and tragedy is heartbreakingly thin. Consider the case of David, up in the Canadian wilderness. Jeff swung the burning flare, its hiss cutting through the frigid air. The wolves hesitated, their eyes reflecting the fire before melting back into the trees, their growls a low rumble in the distance. He knelt by his cousin David, pressing hard on the wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, David was gone. Jeff, his hands trembling, managed to call for help. The signal flickered, but it reached a ranger station. "40 minutes later, authorities arrived by snowmobile to find Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. The wolf tracks told the story. a broad ring around the site, drag marks leading back to the trees, and a hidden deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as blood loss from trauma to the femoral artery, consistent with large animal bites. Conservation officers and wildlife agents closed the area within the hour. DNA samples were taken, and the pack was eventually trapped and relocated far north. Wildlife biologists believe the wolves were defending a food cache, not actively hunting. But that distinction offered little comfort. Then there's the story of Kevin Chen. It was December 9, 2018, and Canyon Vista, a suburban community in Los Angeles, was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. This residential area, where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, was home to Kevin, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player. He was running late after practice and decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, a route he'd taken countless times before without incident. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete, a promising college prospect. Canyon Vista had seen increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires. Displaced predators were seeking new territory and food sources. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings, but most residents saw them as routine precautions. Kevin was aware of the warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals. He usually moved quickly, confident in his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability. Mountain lions are solitary predators, and juvenile males like the one that had been displaced from his territory can be particularly dangerous as they establish new hunting grounds. They're less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. They are capable of incredible stealth, stalking prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush. The attack came from behind as Kevin moved through a dense section of chaparral. The mountain lion launched himself from the brush, landing squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack were futile. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws tore across Kevin's shoulders and torso, opening deep gashes. Kevin's screams echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's cries for help to locate him in the brush. There's a story that haunts me, one of a mountain lion displaced by wildfires, driven into a residential area. It ended tragically for a man named Kevin, who died from his injuries after the encounter. I think about the fear and desperation that must have driven that animal, and the sudden, brutal end to Kevin's life. It reminds me how easily the wild and the human can collide, with devastating consequences. The aftermath of Kevin's death led to some changes. The city fenced off vacant lots in hillside communities and developed new wildlife management protocols. The Canyon Vista community implemented safety measures, motion sensor lighting, emergency communication systems, and wildlife awareness training. Kevin's family even established a memorial foundation to support wildlife safety education. Then there's the story of Brandon Walsh. November 3, 2015, at the Loner Exotic Ranch. It was a sprawling 300-acre facility in East Texas, where wealthy clients paid a high price for photo sessions with dangerous predators. It was a place operating in the shadows, offering interactions that no accredited zoo would ever permit. Brandon, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had found out about the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always looking for a challenge. He'd saved for months to afford this experience, viewing it as the ultimate test of courage around dangerous animals. He had a reputation for helping clients overcome their fears, but perhaps his success made him overconfident. He paid the ranch's fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, supervised, emphasizing the dangers. Bengal tigers are powerful predators. Adult females can weigh up to 350 pounds with incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts. They're solitary animals that can become aggressive when their space is violated. Their jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 lbs per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, maintaining a safety barrier, but he quickly became frustrated with the distance. He wanted closer contact. He convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access to Sasha, arguing that his conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm. Against his better judgment, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclave, separated only by a chain-link barrier. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was mounted on a tripod. Then came his fatal mistake. He crouched down next to the barrier and extended his hand toward Sasha, believing that his demeanor would demonstrate his dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitched. Sasha's attack was swift. The moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose, the tiger's hunting instincts activated. Sasha launched herself at the barrier. Her paws struck the chain-link fencing while her claws found purchase on Brandon's arm. The tiger's strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, her jaws snapping at his position. Claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes while her grip prevented any retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, distracting Sasha, but the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss. Brandon collapsed from shock within minutes of the attack. His physical conditioning proved useless against injuries that no human could. I've seen what happens when humans underestimate the power of animals, when we forget that beneath domestication lies instinct. Brandon, a fitness enthusiast, learned that lesson in the most brutal way imaginable. He died from massive trauma and blood loss after being attacked by a tiger named Sasha, a tiger he was using as a prop for a photo shoot. The ranch was operating illegally without permits or insurance, and now it's permanently closed. It always strikes me how easily things can unravel, how quickly neglect can turn deadly. Take the case of Tommy Rodriguez in Missouri, August 19, 2013. The heat was oppressive. The stench of decay hung heavy over his remote property. He was running an illegal puppy mill, and financial desperation had pushed him to cut corners, fatal corners. His 20-acre property was a labyrinth of makeshift kennels, converted sheds crammed with nearly 80 dogs, all in various states of breeding and neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money, chillingly, came from the security. 4 massive dogs patrolled the perimeter, 2 cane corsos, each over 120 pounds, and 2 mastiff mixes, nearly 140 pounds apiece. These weren't pets, they were weapons, trained for aggression, acquired from a defunct fighting operation. The financial press that would lead to Tommy's demise had been mounting for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, facility maintenance, all eating into his profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations forced him to operate more carefully, but he responded by cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat, were reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. He didn't realize that hungry guard dogs are exponentially more dangerous. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, reduced their tolerance for human presence. The dogs, once content to patrol, now saw everything on the property, including Tommy, as potential competition for scarce resources. For weeks, the dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression. They fought among themselves over food, marked territory more aggressively, showed less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized the warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, the Missouri countryside silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod, but his mind was on financial calculations, not the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with the sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, but financial stress and exhaustion made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence. His massive head lowered in a hunting posture that Tommy should have recognized as a threat. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso; Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix; and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident in his tactical approach. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I've seen what desperation can do. Tommy, who ran one of Missouri's largest illegal puppy mills, met an end that still haunts me. His body, broken and partially consumed, was found near the feeding area, surrounded by the very animals he exploited. The guard dogs, driven by hunger, had turned on him. For 3 weeks his remains went undiscovered, the dogs continuing to feed while others starved in their kennels. The stench of death eventually led authorities to a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's death brought an end to his cruel operation, but the cost was immense. The animals he'd used for profit became his executioners, their hunger transforming them into the monsters he tried to create. It was August 22, 2014, a sweltering summer afternoon in the exclusive Cypress Point community, nestled on the edge of the Florida Everglades. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands, was a monument to luxury living. But nature always finds a way. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, was working alone, maintaining the manicured grounds that made Cypress Point so desirable. He had built his landscaping company from the ground up, supporting his wife and 2 young children. The development's artificial lakes and ponds connected to natural waterways created an elaborate system where wildlife could move freely. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife and knew the dangers. He always checked water features carefully before working near them. But on this day, as he trimmed bushes around a small ornamental pond, his hedge trimmer slipped from his hands and fell into the shallow water. He waded in to retrieve it, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface. American alligators are ambush predators, masters of camouflage. Adult females can reach 10 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power. They are most dangerous when protecting their nesting sites or when surprised. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to disorient and drown prey. Roberto stepped into the pond, assuming it was safe, but the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded from the decorative vegetation. Her powerful jaws clamped down on Roberto's right leg with devastating force. I've spent years studying apex predators, their behaviors, their impact, but nothing prepared me for the case of Tara Whitfield. She believed her money could buy her anything, even safety, even respect from the ocean's most formidable hunter. She sought an extreme experience, unrestricted access to great white sharks. What she found was a brutal lesson in the power of nature. March 22, 2017, dawned bright off the coast of South Australia at the Neptune Islands. These remote, rocky outcrops, surrounded by crystal-clear waters plunging to depths of over 200 feet, are a magnet for migrating great whites, drawn by abundant seal colonies. It was here that Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, arrived, having booked the most expensive shark cage diving package. From the start, her behavior was unsettling. Known for her entitled attitude, she berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, could only watch in discomfort as she screamed about what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with his 18 years of experience navigating these dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggression and utter lack of empathy raised a red flag. She repeatedly demanded the protective cage be removed, convinced her premium price entitled her to unrestricted access. When Dr. Chen tried to explain the dangers, Tara dismissed her as jealous and incompetent. Tara had somehow convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to ruin the company's reputation and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her the extreme experience she demanded. Her disregard for safety reached its peak when she suggested the crew members enter the water first to test the shark's temperament. The waters around Neptune Islands are home to some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators ruling these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weigh over 4,000 pounds, with massive heads and rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth, up to 3 inches long, is designed to slice through flesh and bone. They possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted several great whites using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among them was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, feeding aggressively on the bait. This enormous shark circled the boat with calculated precision, investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to fake an equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the cage. She believed she could manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she desired. Once submerged, she immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, convinced her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact kind of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked movements and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. Approaching from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour, the shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, it struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming, serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing prez. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered Tara's rib cage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying prez while its head thrashed violently from side to side, a signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen firsthand how quickly things can turn fatal in the wild. There's a case that always comes to mind, the story of a woman named Tara. She believed her money could shield her from the realities of nature, even when shark cage diving. She was tragically wrong. The investigation revealed that she deliberately sabotaged equipment and ignored safety protocols. It's a stark reminder that respect for nature is paramount, regardless of perceived safety means. Her story ended with massive blood loss and traumatic shock as a shark consumed portions of her body. Then there's the story of Harold Thompson, or Hank, as everyone called him. It was March 22, 2015, and the Alabama sun was beating down on his property, where the barking of dogs echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres of red dirt. At 71, Hank moved slowly between the encloses, carrying water with the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife, Martha, had built their operation from nothing, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What had started as a hobby had grown into a modest business, with 8 breeding females and 3 males producing litters they sold across the Southeast. But age, it seems, had made Hank careless about safety protocols. In his younger days, he never would have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. He'd seen what these dogs could do, the power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks, but experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, though, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident, caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. Then there's another case, one that took place on September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. I've always been drawn to stories where humans test their limits in the wild. This one, about Sarah, a seasoned hiker in Denali, has stayed with me. She planned a solo 2-day loop near the Tlat River, wanting to be there when the caribou migrated. Wolves, of course, often followed those herds. She wasn't careless. She had bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food. Solo travel wasn't new to her. For years, she'd documented her trips for hiking blogs. She'd filed the required permits for the Denali backcountry zones, Rangers remembered she asked about wolf movements but didn't seem worried when they mentioned increased sightings near the river. Wolves were tracking the caribou migrating south, and fresh tracks had been seen just days before. But to Sarah, it was just part of the environment, something to respect, not fear. Those wolves in that region, built for endurance and speed, typically weighed between 70 and 100 pounds. They could cover 40 miles in a day, and their jaws could deliver a bite force strong enough to crush bone. Yet they rarely bothered people, living mostly on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But when prey became scarce, or if a human scent carried traces of food, their curiosity could be piqued. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that hikers had reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah likely saw those postings when she signed out, but she didn't change her route. Her confidence was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group in a vehicle spotted a lone figure on a gravel bar below the ridge. It was Sarah, waving before heading upstream toward her camp. She reached her final GPS coordinate before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her recovered camera showed wide shots of the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Tracks later showed she moved off the gravel bar toward higher ground, probably planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had changed course toward her position once the caribou herd passed. Sarah likely saw them at a distance and deployed her bear spray. Residue was found on nearby plants. The wind that afternoon shifted westward, causing some blowback of the spray. It worked briefly, driving the wolves back about 20 feet before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading scent. One part of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, suggesting a pulling force. A second wolf joined, biting her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay empty beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground was churned with soil and hair, suggesting a struggle before she was forced down. Tissue marks revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, a killing grip. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with both ground crews and a helicopter after rangers noticed her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and confirmed her final photo was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally. Since there was no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior, no removals were ordered. At a private meeting, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a statement urging the park not to punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways, home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've seen the power of nature turn against us, and it always leaves me with a haunting sense of what could have been avoided. One case that sticks with me is the story of Monica, a woman who encountered the raw force of an alligator's nesting season with tragic consequences. She dismissed warnings, challenged authority, and ultimately paid the ultimate price for her recklessness. Tommy, the tour guide, did his best, repeatedly emphasizing the dangers of venturing outside designated channels. He explained that it was active alligator nesting season, and the park had clearly marked the known nesting sites where territorial males were guarding their offspring with deadly aggression. But Monica only grew more belligerent, accusing Tommy of infringing on her rights and threatening legal action. Ignoring Tommy's pleas, Monica paddled her kayak towards a restricted lagoon, ignoring the warning signs. She insisted she had every right to explore any part of the national park as a tax-paying citizen. That lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, a creature that had been fiercely defending its territory for 3 weeks. The 800-pound reptile had already driven off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered the alligator's most aggressive defensive instincts. The bull alligator detected the vibrations from Monica's paddle strokes almost instantly. The massive reptile, perfectly camouflaged among the submerged vegetation, had been resting motionless beneath the surface. The attack was swift and devastating. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water with explosive force, its massive jaws clamping down on the front of Monica's kayak. The impact instantly capsized her, throwing her into the murky water directly in front of the enraged reptile. Disoriented and panicked, Monica struggled in the water. The alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. The reptile's jaws found purchase on Monica's torso, its razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force shattered multiple ribs instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. Then came the death roll. the alligator's signature killing technique, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated tremendous force, tearing muscles and causing catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute as the alligator spun through the water with Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water while the crushing press prevented any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing further internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The massive reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy immediately radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams couldn't reach the remote lagoon in time. It was May 14, 2017. In a stark contrast, on that same day, the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park rose majestically above the Tennessee landscape. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, while wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in brilliant colors. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé Tom, exploring the park's extensive trail system and taking photos to commemorate their engagement celebration. Sarah had always loved nature photography, carrying her camera on every outdoor adventure to capture memories of their time together. Her medical background gave her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Sarah had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career, saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass while their mother was nowhere to be seen. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, but a mother bear with cubs, that's another story altogether. They become exponentially more aggressive, more territorial than solitary individuals. I've read accounts where female bears will attack without warning, simply to defend their young, viewing any human presence as a mortal threat. Sarah and Tom were on their engagement trip, seeking incredible memories. What they found was something else entirely. Sarah, captivated, began photographing the bear cubs from what she thought was a safe distance. Her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer, wanting better shots. Tom, wisely, repeatedly urged her to maintain a safe distance, to leave the area. But Sarah was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs, oblivious, continued their playful wrestling in the meadow grass as Sarah documented their every move. This photography session went on for nearly 10 minutes. Dozens of images captured. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I see it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved, trying to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked their path to safety. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was, by all accounts, swift and terrifying. A 200-pound female covering the distance to Sarah in mere seconds, her powerful legs propelling her massive frame with surprising speed, her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah tried to retreat when she finally saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached her before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, the crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.